All right, we're on top of Macy's department store at the Oak Ridge Mall in South San Jose. This system up here consists of about 1,600 panels grouped in different pods. As with most large commercial installations, the requirements are that they be no larger than 150 feet by 150 feet. As you can see, there's plenty of room for us to work away from the panels, skylights, large glass areas for us to ventilate through. On even larger installations, it could be up to 8 feet of a walkway along the perimeter of the building, access to the skylights, and even ventilation spaces if there were no skylights on the structure. Again, the important thing is do not walk on the panels, stay away from them. Right now we're going to go and take a look at the inverters for this system. All right, here we are at the DC disconnect. This is the same as the residences. All of the panel wiring is coming into this box right here. This is how you shut it off. Around the corner over here are the main inverters. All weather-tight cabinets. We don't need to enter these cabinets. We've got our disconnect right here going into the inverter, and our AC disconnect going out to the utility. That would be all that we would need to do to isolate this system up here from delivering power back into the grid. It's not necessary to shut this system down unless the actual panel systems are damaged by a fire. If we're ventilating somewhere on the roof, we don't need to shut this system off here. As with most commercials, we're not able to shut down all the power anyways. All right, so here we see the conduits coming off of the array going into that large combiner box, and from that point it then goes on to that array disconnect. What I want to show you over here is little weather stations. This is all part of what they call data acquisition to monitor the health and performance of this whole system. It consists of a wind speed gauge, a temperature monitor, a pyranometer. This measures the actual amount of sunlight that's falling on all these panels. There's a little modem right here, and it sends all this information to computers that are monitoring this system 365 days a year. They can keep track of the system. If the inverters are starting to decrease their output or there's a bad panel in the array, they'll know that remotely. Okay, our next commercial structure that we're on top of today is a very green building. They actually produce more energy than they use and have a whole host of other high-tech features to the building. One of which is the way these panels are mounted. These are actually integrated into the roof membrane. They can be walked on structurally, but prefer not to, just not to mark them up. It's a 30 kilowatt system, and again, you can see that there's room for us to operate. There are skylights and room between them. Again, we don't want to be cutting into these panels. We'll be completing a circuit that we don't want to. But it is a unique new system that we might see more of in the future. Here we are inside the mechanical room for this building. And really the only thing that tells us that there is equipment here for a photovoltaic system really comes down to the labeling. There is labeling on disconnects referring to photovoltaic system. And when we enter these buildings, this is going to be the thing that we need to look out for to identify that the building has a photovoltaic generating system. All right, here's another interesting application for photovoltaics. This whole awning on the front side of this building is comprised of solar cells sandwiched between two layers of glass. So in addition to providing shading, it's creating electricity for the building. All right, so now that we have seen several examples of PV systems, we're going to talk about applying all of this into your initial scene size up and your tactics. Identifying the PV panels versus water heating panels is the first step. They look similar to PV panels, but there will be far fewer. Usually 2 to 6 panels instead of 20 to 40 in a PV system. And they contain water or a non-toxic glycol that can be up to 180 degrees in temperature. Here are some of the modern water heating panels. Notice the copper water inlets and outlets. Another identifier of water heating panels is the vertical tubing that carries the water through the panels. Here's another type of a system. It's a very old one and non-functioning. This is a batch heater. These systems can weigh quite a bit, usually up to 700 pounds. All right, what do you see on the roof of this house? This is PV or water heating panels. There's only 3 of them, and again, you can see the vertical tubes inside them. These are water heating panels. I should add that all of these systems we have seen are called grid-tied systems, which means the power is sent directly back into the power grid. There's no battery backup. These grid-tied inverters have been popular for the last 5 or 6 years. Most PV systems installed prior to 2002 will have a battery bank to store the power. You'll find these battery banks in garages or outbuildings usually. And also you'll see a very large conduit carrying all of the cables up to the panels. What we need to be aware of is the hazard is now the batteries on these systems, not the conduit. Handle these as a hazmat if damaged. These systems are considered low voltage as opposed to the grid-tied high voltage systems. Since there are so many systems already installed before the setback guidelines were established, we may have to deal with some of these in the future. Here are a few that could present some problems. This first one is on a fire station in Boulder Creek, California. It has several very large arrays that may take some creative tarping to cover all of these panels. How would you ventilate this one? Notice there's panels on both pitches. Horizontal ventilation would be a great idea. This also is not allowed under the new guidelines. Here's some more challenging vertical ventilation problems. This is a large building that's a very large array on the south side. And you notice the north side does give us some roof to work on. And here's one more. Those are skylights in the middle there. These skylights would be very difficult to open topside. All right, so the next issue to deal with operationally is salvage and overhaul. This structure that we are at right now has arrays on a couple different pitches of the house. What we're going to show you is how to effectively tarp these kinds of houses when you can. We can't always tarp them, but in the daytime, as soon as we can tarp these panels, the safer we'll all be. The main point here is just to cover all of the panels. We want to make sure that every single panel is covered with a heavy, dark tarp. We use green tarps here, those work fine. The blue plastic tarps don't work. You can use black visqueen, that will work too. If you can't get to an array, you can use an aerial ladder or pike poles, whatever it takes to cover them all up. Will make the structure safe for us to get in there and pull ceilings and not be concerned about coming in contact with conduit. All right, here's the inverter on the system. You can see as we're applying the tarps over the panels, the voltage is dropping until it gets to 0. Once the voltage is down to 0, there is no hazard in the conduits coming from the panels as long as they're covered. This is the best way to leave a system safe after a nighttime fire, so that when sun comes up the next day, there's no arcing inside, or during a daytime fire, so we can aggressively overhaul and pull ceiling and not be concerned about coming in contact with conduit. All right, there's 6 key PV safety points that we want to address. Number 1, daytime equals danger. Nighttime, there is minimal electrical hazard. During your initial size up, if a PV system is identified by any personnel, it's imperative that the IC be notified. Securing the main electrical panels does not shut down the PV panels. Electricity will continue to flow through the panels and the conduit to the inverter. Apparatus-mounted scene lights can produce enough light to create electricity. Sunlight can only be blocked by covering the entire PV array with 100% opaque material. Remember, all of the cells need to be covered. Stay away from the solar panels and the conduit. Do not break, remove, or walk on any of the solar panels. So I hope this information has been helpful to you. Our goal is to give you more tools so that when you come upon a structure that's involved in fire and has a photovoltaic system on it, you understand it and you can still fight fire aggressively while providing for safety first. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to call me at Station 13 on the B shift. Take care and be safe.